and listen for its hymn to Mel's home.
At this point, and so we are going to get him to give us a call and tell us what the latest things are as far as the UFOs across the country being reported are. Now, the National UFO Reporting Center, if you don't know, is a reporting agency that has actually got their hotline phone number in every FAA tower in the country. This is military and commercial things. And, of course, we are going to have Peter Davenport.
Peter Davenport is right on now.
What he has found just lately as people call in from various parts of the country.
And Michael?
So we will see who is on the line first, whether it's going to be Brian or whether we have Peter Davenport calling in. And, I just wanted to make sure that people realize that I am, at this point, calling in from a secluded location up in, actually it's South Washington State, right in the central part of the state. It's a place called Trout Lake, Washington. And we are here up in a place called ECETI Ranch. That's ECETI. And it's run by a gentleman by the name of James Gilliland. And James has hundreds of people visit him every weekend, and even during the week as well, where they come from all over the country, and they actually get to experience UFOs flying in and around the Mount Adams area. Because ECETI Ranch is located just 14 miles south of the mountain itself, with a beautiful view, sweeping view of Mount Adams, which is covered with snow at the top, of course. It's about 12,000 feet high. But every night, hundreds of people gather in the grassy ranch area at ECETI. And we are the UFO I-Team here with everyone, filming what we are going to investigate up on the mountain itself. We actually have a team that will be remaining at ECETI Ranch with the telescopes, the high-powered binoculars, and the night vision cameras, video cameras, and stop-action photography. And then we are going to also have another group that will be going up the mountain itself, and the UFO I-Team's Lee Strauss will be taking that intrepid team to the top of Mount Adams with ice picks and with crampons, lugging the camera gear with them to the top of the mountain and seeing what they can see up there during our Skywatch evening watches that we were going to have. Then there's going to be another team led by myself to the other side of Mount Adams, and that will be at a place called Takalaka Lake. It's actually spelled just kind of like that, Taklakh, and I believe you pronounce it Takalaka.
Now, Peter is on the line for you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Peter, for calling in to the show tonight. How have you been?
I've been good, Michael, and I've been listening to your monologue here. It's so nice to hear the voice of the paranormal attorney again, and I never cease to marvel at the wonders of electronic magic, because I'm in a very rural section of Virginia. I arrived back on the East Coast last Thursday for a reunion with a group of people with whom I worked 40 years ago in the Soviet Union. we thought it would be nice to have a get-together of all 35 or 40 of us. Had a wonderful time together, and a number of the people are either current or former ambassadors, and it turns out very interested in the subject of UFOs, at least willing to listen to an intrepid UFO investigator like me. So nice to hear your voice and nice to be on the program again.
Well, that has got to be quite a reunion of your colleagues from that long ago and from the Soviet Union. Now, before we get too farther into this, I want to make sure that people that are just tuning in know who Peter Davenport and the National UFO Reporting Center is, and then I want to follow up on how your colleagues and you got along this last couple days. But why don't you tell folks a little bit about the National UFO Reporting Center, maybe for some of the younger folks who don't really know what it is, and how they can actually make a UFO report to the New Fork agency.
Well, thank you for that invitation. I'm delighted to do it, and not only younger folks but older folks. I suspect there are a lot of people who do not, a lot of our listeners who are not familiar with the National UFO Reporting Center, particularly if they're outside the United States. But the National UFO Reporting Center was founded in October of 1974. We're coming up on our 44th birthday here shortly.
Is
founded
that right?
by a gentleman whose name was Robert J. Gribble, quite well known by UFO people in the state of Washington. And he had retired from the Seattle Fire District as a fireman in 1974, although he'd been interested in UFOs, I think, as early as the 1940s. So when he retired, he argued that what we needed in this country, this of course is long before internet, he said we need a clearinghouse. We need one telephone number where people can call if they believe they've seen a UFO, and not only call it, but report it to that number. Well, that was the beginning of what has lasted now for 44 years, and just 24 years ago, in August of 1994, so 24 years ago this month, I inherited that hotline, and I've been running it ever since. So that, in a nutshell, is the history of the hotline and the National UFO Reporting Center. To answer your second question of how people can submit reports, they can do them either if they have a recent sighting to report within the last week or so. They can call the hotline, area code 206-722-3000, and talk to me. I'm usually the person who answers that phone.
Yes, you are.
Or if they'd like to submit a written report, and I certainly hope they would, because that's the only kind of report we really can use and post to our website. They can write out a detailed description of what they've seen and submit that statement using our online report form at ufocenter.com.
And it just occurred to me, Peter, that you mentioned in August of 1995 you took over the reins at the helm of the National UFO Reporting Center. And I believe, wasn't it the MUFON conference in September of that year where we actually met each other?
It was indeed. You have a good memory. We met there, and true to your tradition and your networking capabilities, Michael, you called me within the subsequent month after the MUFON symposium in Seattle and invited me to speak before a fraternal group up in, I think it was Edmonds, or maybe...
yes, I think it was Edmonds. You're right.
It might have been the Lions Club, and on I think it was the 19th of September, 1995, I spoke before your group. It might have been Lions or perhaps Rotary. Were you a member of Rotary?
Yes, that was my Rotary Club that I ended up being the speaker coordinator for a period of time. And who the heck should I call but my new friend that I just had recently met, Peter Davenport, to ask you to come up and talk about UFOs to my very conservative friends in Rotary.
And I remember there were some highway patrol officers there. And,
oh, yeah.
I noticed they didn't walk out on the presentation, so I guess they were finding the presentation to be of some degree of interest anyway. Or perhaps they were just being very polite and didn't want to offend the speaker. But we've been, you and I have been friends ever since, and we've been talking about UFOs and many, many other subjects ever since.
Well, thank you very much for being able to continue to be my friend and to come on these crazy ideas that I have of having you come on a radio show that is just beginning, actually. The Night Dreams Talk radio show that I have on Saturday evenings from 7 to 10 p.m. is a really new and fun adventure of mine. So thank you again for that. Now, actually, I think what we should do before we get too far in is if you have some recent sighting reports that you'd like to share with us, this would be a good time to do it. And then if you're able to hang in there with us till perhaps 7:30 or so, we can talk about some of the other things that we've done in the past together, including our ultimate road trips that we've gone on. That might be fun.
Yeah. Well, I can give a couple descriptions or give renditions of a couple reports that I think our audience might be very interested in. Recent reports, I don't have them in front of me, but one comes to mind in particular. We just posted it to our website this past Wednesday night, the 22nd of August, before I left for the East Coast. Comes from a gentleman who describes a sighting he experienced as a very young lad back in 1951 up in the city of Linden, I think it was. Linden, Washington, which is, you've been there before. It's near Mount Baker up in the northwestern corner of Washington State. But he was a very young lad, and I think, I'm going on memory, Michael, but he describes a circumstance in which he was standing with his sister, and they saw a very peculiar bright light in the northwestern sky. They very quickly realized that it was approaching their position, generally their position, at a very rapid rate. And as they watched it, they were flabbergasted to realize that this single bright light either was or was turning into 4 separate disks that hovered. He thinks they were far enough away to be above the Abbotsford Airport, which is in British Columbia, just north of the Canadian-U.S. border. And it split into 4 separate disks, all very close to one another, hovered there for a very short period of time. I think it was seconds or minutes that he witnessed them only. He and his sister witnessed them. And they suddenly recombined and accelerated and flew back, I think he says, to the northwest at a very, very blistering pace. It's a riveting report, and it is the type of report I like to receive. People are always contacting me, asking me whether I wanted them to submit reports that were more than a week old. Well, my response to that is very clear and very resolute. If they've ever in their lives seen a UFO, I would like them to submit a report so we can post it to our website. Of course, it's all anonymous. Nobody will ever know who had submitted the report.